Welcome to What Great Teachers Know That All Parents Can Use, a podcast where the classroom meets the kitchen table. I'm your host, Peyten Williams from Bow Bend Consulting, and I'm so glad you're here. As a parent, you're on the front lines of raising a child of character. It's a big job, and some days it's easy to wonder if you're getting it right. That's where we come in. This show is designed by teachers who've walked alongside hundreds of students, and we're here to be your guides. Each episode brings you practical wisdom from the classroom to help you lead with confidence at home, because your child's journey matters. And while every journey is different, you don't have to walk it alone. Today, you are going to be so inspired and equipped after our conversation with Bridget Johnson, founder and CEO of Dean's Roundtable. Bridget, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Peyton. It's great to see you. How are you?
I am doing so well, Bridget. I just love your history and thinking about deans and thinking about how the deans support kids. So before we dive into anything really meaty, can you just start by explaining to parents, like, what is it that you do and why is it so important for the kids and the parents?
Absolutely. So I support what I like to call student life professionals. It started out as just deans because I was a dean and felt like I needed support in the work that I was doing. But now I've expanded that to include all folks who are working with students outside the classroom, because those are the people who really are the glue that holds the school together. And so if they're not supported, if they're not feeling like they can do their work, if they don't have the resources, then it actually really has a direct effect on the student life experience and a student's experience in the community.
And Bridget, I think that's so cool. I mean, that work is so niche and so perfect because, anyone in a school knows that people who are dealing with the student life end of things they carry such a load, both in terms of leadership and in terms of school climate, but also in terms of relationships. And
Absolutely.
that kind of support is so important so that they can do their work really well.
Yes.
And I think it's important for parents to know these professionals are not just sort of lollygagging around. Like, they are out seeking to get better at, the good ones. So definitely recommend Dean's Roundtable to all of y'all student life people for sure. And we'll get into that at the end. But, so Bridget, you were a dean, right?
And
I
was, yes.
Work that you did for a long time.
Yeah.
And so you get to see students kind of outside the class, the good, the bad, the ugly, stress or some conflict or bad decision-making, learning opportunities, as we like to call them. What are some insights that as a dean you gleaned about those moments or about kids that you kind of wish parents knew?
One of the things that I learned, it was a huge light bulb moment for me, was that, we think we know what's going on. We have made assumptions. We're the adults here. Oh, I've seen this before, or you've done that before, and you think you know. You don't know. It's really, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg. And oftentimes we're not curious enough because either we're frustrated or we don't have enough time. And we don't ask the questions that will really get to the heart of what's going on. And kids know that, and they know when you're engaged. They know when you're kind of just checking the box, and they'll respond accordingly. And so I had to slow down as a dean and not assume that I knew what was going on and be curious. So I encourage parents to be a little bit more curious about what's going on. And I know sometimes that's a eye roll from kids when you ask a lot of questions, but sometimes those questions can give you some insights that you actually didn't have or didn't even think about.
Do you have some favorite questions that we can pilfer from you? Like, great questions that always seem to work, or icebreaker questions that you're like, all right, I'm going to warm this kid up?
Well, usually, what I have been saying a lot lately with even deans in the student life work is connection before correction. So spending a little bit of time just like, how's it going? What is happening? How'd that thing go last week? Or what's happened? What's coming up for you this week that you're nervous about? Is that giving you anxiety? One of the things that I, started as like, just what happened, right? Like you think you seen your child did something. You're like, oh, usually it's why did you do that? Instead of saying why, like what's happening here? What's going on? What made you make that decision? And thinking about things that way is it's a slight change, but can really shift the trajectory of the conversation.
I really like what you just said about starting with getting the kids' perspective on what happened. And I really like that you just reminded us also that a lot of times we think we know what happened, but we
Mm-hmm.
might not know. And case in point, I'm thinking about a perfect example. I've got three kids. So many times, one will come up the stairs and say, so and so did X to me. And
Uh-huh.
my first inclination is to completely believe them, march down the stairs and be like, I'm going to get this child in trouble, right? Or I'm going to teach you a lesson, right? And really, I do such a better job when I do what you just recommended, which is to say, hey, I just heard this. Can you tell me about what just happened from your perspective? Because a lot of times there's a thing before the thing before the thing.
Right.
It's a lot more complicated than I originally thought. So that is such good advice, Bridget. Thank you.
Absolutely. And even before like marching down and like having the conversation with the other child saying, walk me through what happened. Tell me in your own words what happened. Because it might or you might be able to get to the bottom of things before you even have the conversation with the second child. So
Yeah, well, and with that first child, I totally agree, Bridget. And you just reminded me a lot of times it's like, well, why do you think they did that?
mm.
They're like, well, because I hit them. You're like, well,
Oh, okay.
yes, our kids, these are all beautiful learning opportunities. This is job
Yes.
security for us parents and, student life professionals. But so our kids are going to mess up. They're going to get in
Yes,
trouble. They're going
absolutely. That's what
to
they're
need.
supposed to do. That is the whole purpose of adolescence. They are finding where the boundaries are. They are finding where the line is. And they're like, can I put my toe on the line? Can I hover my leg over the line? What if I do like the Karate Kid things over the line? Is that okay? And it's exhausting for us, but that is the process. That's how they learn. That's how they kind of figure out who they are as individuals. And we have to let some of that just happen.
I don't think we can hear that enough as parents because there is a piece of us, whether we admit it or not, that sort of hangs on to our children's success or failure as a measure of our ability
Oh,
as a
absolutely.
parent. And so, what is it like? Obviously, like you've probably partnered with lots of deans over the years, you've partnered with lots of student life people, you've been one yourself. What are some stories you've heard about parents who've done a good job in the moment where they're, when you're seeing those parents and you're seeing those kids and the parents are responding well? What are some things they do that you're like, I wish all parents would do this?
Well, one, when you have to talk to the dean about your child, you're nervous, your defenses are up, you're ready to protect your child. You don't want them to have, feel any harm or hurt or pain, right? That's usually the general thought. And that's a normal, honest reaction and it's natural. You want to protect your own, right? But I would say before we do that, let's just take a step, take a deep breath and come in with an open mind and listen to what the dean or the person that you're having the conversation with has to say about what's going on, and try and kind of take that emotional kind of noise out, which is really hard to do. Let me be clear. I'm not saying, oh, just don't be emotional about your child having to have a conversation with the dean or go through the discipline process. That's an emotional time, and that's okay. But if you can just kind of take that down a little bit and say, okay, let me just hear what's going on. Let me actually also ask questions of my child about what's happening. And let's not take everything at face value because, again, there's usually more to the story. And you also want to make sure that you're asking questions of the adults too, to make sure that, because sometimes they've got some things that they didn't actually disclose at that time that could be helpful for you. So context matters. When we can have a conversation and a back and forth about what's going on, not an accusatory or you don't like my child or you guys have never treated my child right, that it just makes it hard for everyone involved.
I think what I really hear you saying is that partnership, curiosity is going
Hmm.
to get you and your child further and support your child better than
Absolutely.
our natural fight or flight response will.
Coming in hot, right? And the other thing I would suggest is before any of this comes up, like getting to know the folks at the school. And so for some parents, that's easier than others, with schedules. But if there is a game that you can go to, or if there's a time that you can come in and just say hello and introduce yourself or build relationship with those adults on campus, then we also have some connection there that comes before the correction part too. So as much as you can, be a presence on your kid's campus. And if you can't get there in person, schedule some time to do a Zoom or just to kind of touch base with the people that are the adults that are in your child's life.
I think what's really interesting too is I've heard this and I've felt this also as a parent. At the elementary level, you feel super connected with the teachers.
Oh, absolutely.
You might even have their cell phone number, right? And maybe you see the principal every day at the carpool.
The carpool line, all of that, yep.
But as you get older, or not you, well, you do, but also
your we all get older, unfortunately.
As we get older, the kids, in middle school, less of the teachers and potentially less of the admin, and high school the same. And a lot of times as parents, you really don't know them until your child is in trouble. And so I love that advice about just making that correction or that connection before you have the correction. That's so good. Yeah. That's like a positive discipline we know for kids works for adults.
Exactly.
And I think it leads us into this next idea of the power of belonging and the power of how student life professionals really work to foster that for kids. Can you talk to us a little bit about, what are deans and student life professionals doing to foster belonging at school and why that's really important and what parents can do to support that?
Yeah, belonging, and I feel like that's kind of the new buzzword in some ways right now. A lot of people talking about belonging, which is great because we don't just want participation, right? Because that's not a clear metric of whether or not a student feels like they belong, that they're seen, that they heard, and that they matter. And so that's the thing that I think that student life professionals are focusing on, not just kind of how many kids are doing what, how they're showing up, but looking at the engagement, looking at how they are kind of interacting with their peers, having spaces where kids can kind of talk about in smaller groups what's going on, micro communities, or what we call advisory, thinking about those spaces where there's, a smaller opportunity or a smaller space where kids can really talk about how they're feeling and what's happening, or hear about kind of how they're feeling like they're disconnected or don't feel like they're a part of. Oftentimes we'll hear those things and then we start to fix, right? We don't ask the kids, like, what would be helpful for you here? We've already decided we know what to do, so we're going to go in and fix. But I caution people, both parents and adults in schools, to pause a minute and actually ask the kids what would be helpful in this situation. Because some kids are like, it'll be fine, it'll blow over, I understand what's going on, while we're over here trying to fix. Other times they do have some concrete ideas about what would be helpful, and we need to spend some time listening to that.
What really is rolling through my mind right now is two things. One, all the work of Alfred Adler, the psychologist whose positive discipline is based off of, it's like the two things that motivate human behavior is belonging and significance, which bears up with the most recent research from David Yeager around children ages 10 to 25, that they really are focused on status, which is like a combination of those two things, right? And how when we get at the root of that, it's beautiful. And I think what you said, though, that I really want to highlight is that so many times as adults, we strip away significance by taking the fixing out of the hands of the person.
Of the student. Yeah.
And we do it because we're adults and we're like, oh, we know. And I love what you said, that you ask the kids first. And how many times as a parent, we hear a kid or our child say, oh, I got a bad grade, or, oh, I blah, 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 blah. And instead of saying, well, hey, tell me a little bit more about that, or what do you need for support, or how do you want to change that? What support do you need from me? We're like, here's what you should do.
We're swooping in. I got this. Let me put my cape on 1 second.
and that is so natural.
It is absolutely natural. So we have to say, oh, wait, Bite your tongue. And so you need that little person on your shoulder saying, 1 second, just slow down.
Yeah. Well, and you really make someone feel like they belong and like they're important when you ask for their opinion about something.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, adults, you can make your child feel like they belong by listening to them. Hashtag Bridget Johnson, put it on the bumper sticker. Okay, so on the flip side of
Yeah.
belonging, then there's sort of this like, middle school, high school, a lot of times, I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like I'm
Yes.
important. But there are other things that I know deans have a little view into, or the student life professionals, like all the counselors, have a little view into out of like, here are some of the things that are going on that students are struggling with right now that might not be the same things that we struggled with as,
Oh,
when we were in
absolutely.
middle and
Oh
high
my
school.
gosh. It's so hard. So much harder now. There's
What are the
so many
things? Give us
things.
the update. Give us the scoop. What do we need to be on the lookout for?
Well, I mean, we talk about this a lot already, but social media has really changed uh, lives, everyone's lives, not just students' lives, but even my life. I mean, my life is wholly different in how I spend kind of my downtime and free time with the advent of social media. But think about it this way in terms of students and not feeling like, when we left school and we, kind of came home, like that was our sanctuary in some ways. And now there's no escape. You're seeing this stuff all the time. And if you don't have some sort of like, kind of curfew with social media or your phone, this can go well into the night, not even evening, well into the night. And so you're distracted. You're comparing yourself to what other folks are doing. You're saying, oh, I need to be better. And what all the negative things that people are doing out there and not being kind and not having civil discourse. And all of those things affect kind of what kids are thinking about, how they feel like they're supposed to be in the world, what they need to do to give themselves status. All those things that we've been talking about can really make it difficult for kids to figure out like how to be. Really. And so that's one thing. And I think the other thing is just we have now for better or for worse like piled so many things in terms of tutoring and working out and sports teams and AAU and travel this and travel that, and you've got to build up your resume, and like where do you want to go to college in 3rd grade, and like all of these things, and like kids are really stressed because the parents are stressed. And so it's the kind of the, not the hamster wheel, I don't know what to call it at this point, but this kind of road to achievement, right? Everyone's got an idea of what it's going to take for their child to succeed and what success looks like, and what you talk to your friends about in terms of we do the same thing that the kids are doing. We're comparing, like, how's your child doing? And, oh, my child's not doing that. Are we behind? Boy, we sometimes put too much stock in what we think will make our children happy and successful, again, instead of asking and thinking about what they would like. The best thing for your child is for them to be excited and happy about the next level, not to just say, well, this is what my parents wanted me to do, or this is what I'm supposed to do. There's so many options out there now. And some people hate when I say this, but like a 4-year college is not necessarily the only option anymore, and it's not the only pathway to success. And so, us traditionalists out there think that that's really the only way, and not only 4-year college, but certain 4-year colleges. And so, thinking about that differently can really take the stress and the pressure off everyone.
I want to stay on this for a minute
Okay.
because it sounds to me, I don't think parents who've just been listening probably have thought quite so deeply as you have about, would you see kids struggling? When you see as a dean or as a counselor or as whatever student life professional you're in, you see a pattern of kids coming in. It's not just one, it's a lot, who are overscheduled, who are stressed, who are always pushed to achieve, or perhaps without enough reflection about why or to
Mm-hmm.
what end.
Yeah.
Have you ever counseled some families, or have you counseled student life professionals around how to help families with this? Like, what is their first best step to take if they're like, we want to get off this hamster wheel, but it just feels impossible? What what's my first step I need to take?
Well, you got to think about why you're doing this. kind of what's the end goal? And is it your end goal or is it your child's end goal? And that can get a little complicated. And so you need to just be okay. Like, we're human, we're not perfect, and it's okay to like, ooh, maybe I'm a little too hard charging in this area, or maybe I need to take a step back. Maybe this is more about me than it is about them. And so that's the first question. What's the end goal here? And also talk to your child again. What's the end goal for them? Are we lining up? Because it's different if everyone's on board about what the goal is and understanding kind of what it may take to get to a certain goal. Now, and that's different for everyone. And there's some, like, if you want to go to MIT and you want to major in, you know, bio blah blah blah, because I am not a science person, there are certain things that you have to do. There are certain classes that you have to take. There are certain marks that you're going to have to make before you are even eligible to do those things. And so how do you set yourself up for that path? And so there are paths, right? And so also, you know, yeah, I say that, but then I take a step back because also people are, I want to play professional sports, or I want to even play at the college level. And so for some people, people think that that means, okay, now you have to do that sport all the time. That's the only thing you can do. There's no other pathway. Now we need to get you trainers and all the things. And that's also not necessarily true anymore. And so just thinking about healthy ways to kind of achieve the goal that you want, that still gives you some free time, some agency, and some space to be a child. Because what people forget is that once you get to that next level, you know, the pathway to adulthood, you're in the fast lane, and so it comes at you pretty fast, and you're wishing, what happened to spring break? What happened to those times? We don't get spring break as adults, unless you work in schools. But, you know, if you're in corporate America, there's no spring break. Not really. So you might get 3 weeks of vacation a year. So think about that. Is that what you want to rush to?
Well, and Bridget, I think you bring up something really interesting because I think a lot of times there are these sort of milestones that we look at those without looking at the like further ones. So when I coach families, I always start with exactly what you talked about, which is the why. Like, why are you doing all this? What do
Mm-hmm.
you want? What are you trying to achieve? And actually, like, I really challenge families to look even more forward than college or a job, but like the kind of person they want their kids to be.
Yeah.
Because honestly, that's actually the piece that you guys will probably agree on. Your kids and you might not agree on whether they should go to whatever college or
Right.
whether they should take 6 APs or whether they should
Right.
have this type of job or make this kind of money. That's actually your kid's decision. And you can certainly be a guide, but you all both will agree, hopefully, that you want to be a good person. You want to be a person of
Yeah.
character, of honesty, of loyalty, integrity, trustworthiness, all that stuff. That doesn't negate the other milestones,
Not at
but it
all.
just puts them at like a little bit less, right,
Mm-hmm.
of an intensity. And I wonder if what I'm hearing you say is that parents are maybe forgetting that farther piece because they have their eyes so fixed on college or the varsity team or the 6 APs.
I agree with you 1000%. We've got to think about people and not the goals and not the kind of the achievements. You know, if you ask a parent if you would rather your child to be happy and healthy and safe or have a lot of achievements, which would you choose?
Yeah. Well, and I think this circles back to what you were saying earlier about the real hard struggle of social media
Mm-hmm.
and that comparison trap we can get into because we see what other people are doing. Like, wow, they went on a 6-day baseball tournament to play the Braves, and um, like my kid's still hitting off a wiffle ball. Like, oh gosh, we're behind. And that, I think what you just highlighted is something for parents to be aware of because it can create anxiety in parents,
Oh,
but also
absolutely.
in their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What are
Yep.
some of the kids who maybe have kind of overcommitted? What are
Mm-hmm.
some of the things that a parent could look for if they are like, are we doing too much? Like what are some of the signs that student life professionals see coming out at school of
Hmm.
kids who are stressed, anxious, overcommitted, struggling with the pace of their life.
How much sleep do they get at night? Mm-hmm. Sleep matters for all of us, not just students, but certainly during your adolescent years. You want to make sure that they're getting enough sleep. And are they up because they are working on projects? Are they up because they didn't have enough time to do their homework because they were at four other things in the evening? With that said, how free time and downtime is spent? Do they have any? and and if they do, what is that time spent doing? I think those are the two things that you can look at. And we see how that manifests itself when kids come to school and they've had the average 5 hours of sleep. Like, are you kidding? I would be a mess. As an adult, but thinking about that for students who need at least 8 to 10 hours of sleep, if they're operating on 5 hours of sleep, that can only go on for so long before that unravels. And you see that in irritability, you see that in just a lack of being able to focus, you see that in just being just kind of a zombie.
I feel like you're not just preaching about student care and self-care, you're also preaching about parent self-care. I
Hmm.
laugh, like, so many parents, their lives, and mine included, revolve so much around our kids' activities and their schooling. And on one hand, there's something beautiful about that sacrifice, and
Yeah.
it ought to be that way. And on the other hand, there's something disturbing about it and the way that it can lead to entitlement. It can lead to codependence. It can
Mm.
lead to kids not feeling like they can do anything and therefore don't have to do anything, right? It's just
Mm.
like there's so much imbalance that I know that the student life leaders at schools are really thinking about.
Yes,
And
balance.
so, what do you see deans working on or student life professionals working on right now in schools that you're really excited about, that you think is going to help move the needle on some of this for kids and for their families?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think a lot of student life people are thinking about restorative practices and relationships a lot right now because, again, that connection, right? And so, how you can kind of see what's going on with students, how you can better support them, how you will know if they're feeling like they belong and that they're being seen and that they matter is by building those relationships. But first, starts with the adults on campus, right? Modeling that good behavior in terms of how we check on each other, how we show up for people, how we support them, and signaling that we care about, the people that we work with. We can't do that work with students if we don't start first with the adults. But that's the thing that I'm seeing right now that's very heartwarming for me, that people are really, thinking about relationships more in a way that they hadn't before.
So, Bridget, for parents who aren't familiar with restorative practice, can you give us the dumbed down version?
Absolutely. Restorative practice is really the science behind relationships, full stop. Relationships matter when you think about the community and repairing harm. And so you can't restore anything that you haven't already had, right? So you can't restore something back if there's nothing there. And so that's what restorative practices talks about, is how you build relationship and how you acknowledge and make sure that people feel like they matter before there is harm, so that when there is harm, that you have something to go back to. What we want people to think about is how we are building relationships in our everyday lives, knowing that we're not perfect, knowing that we're going to make mistakes. And when we do, being able to call back and on that relationship to get grace, benefit of the doubt, those sorts of things, so that we can move forward in a healthy way.
Mm. So, I'm hearing you say, like you have continued to say in this podcast, relationships are important. Proactive relationship building, connection is important between parents, students, and that triangle of connection and really strong connection is what, when somebody does something human, since we tend to be human all the
That
time,
part.
that because we have those relationships, because we have that connection, we can repair the broken in a lot
Exactly.
easier way, and that
Exactly.
we respond to mistakes and brokenness with an eye towards repair, which I think is
Hmm.
really special. I feel like that's a change from when you and I were growing up.
Oh, absolutely. Even when I was, as a dean, I feel like that thinking has shifted. I'm like, man, if I had these tools with me as a dean, things would have felt differently.
Well, and it's funny that you say that because, belonging and significance, those are feelings, right? You
Hmm.
feel like you belong. You might not
Right.
actually belong, but as long as you feel like you
Feel
belong,
like it's good. Yeah, everyone's good.
you might feel like you're important. And that's what's important. So let's take an example right now. Let's say my child cheated on a test.
Hmm.
Well, when I was in school, where I went to school, that could be grounds for expulsion, where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, you cheated. Sorry, bub, you're out.
Right.
And that is one certain obvious consequence, and depending on school policy and stuff like that. But let's
Right.
say it's a sixth grader who's brand new to the school, and y'all have decided to have a little bit of a like, well, let's teach this, let's use this as a teachable moment instead of a punishment moment. What might restoration look like now versus when we were growing up for a situation like that?
So I love the example you brought up, and I love the fact that you said, kind of punishment, because one of the things that people talk about or they think that restorative practices is the absence of consequences. And that's not true at all. It can be both and. There can be some restorative work that happens about repairing the harm that you've done to the community. And there also can be consequences for your actions because that's the world we live in. And so if we walk down that path of saying that there are no consequences for your actions, we're not setting students up for success in the real world. The difference is that we're not just handing out a consequence or a punishment. The difference is now we talk about why we made the decisions that we made, what sort of harm that this caused in the community, how we can repair that harm, but then also what are the consequences for causing harm in the community? If we want to keep down the likelihood of reoccurrence, that's what we need to do. Because if we don't talk about these things and don't talk about the why, then they're more likely to reoffend, for lack of a better term.
I think that's so cool. So I think about like, let's say my child cheats today,
Hmm.
instead of just being suspended or expelled or getting a zero, that those things might still happen.
They might. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
probably should in some ways, right? But there's with restoration, there's an and piece. You
Exactly.
have the consequence, and you empower a kid to learn how to make it right. So maybe they have to like write an apology letter, or they have to do the assignment over,
Hmm.
or they have to do a presentation on the temptations of cheating and how to avoid them with AI, or
Yeah,
whatever, in order to help that child come back into the community and not be ostracized.
exactly.
I'm curious because, every parent out here, their nightmare is for their kid to get in so much trouble that they get expelled or suspended or are a
Sure.
consistent behavior issue.
Sure.
Are schools doing anything where they are also helping the parents get restored with their kid, or the parents feel restored back into the community? Because that feels like a piece that a lot of parents, they're like, everyone's going to hate me because my child
Mm,
did this bad
did
thing.
X, right. And so that's a great question, Peyton. And I think people are starting to do that work, but I think there's more work that needs to be done in that area. And talking about restorative practices with families at whether it's parent teacher conferences or newsletters or however you communicate with your parent community, that language needs to be in there as well because we want everyone speaking the same language. We don't want kids to have different language at home than they do at school. And so if everyone's thinking about this in that way, then when these things arise, we're all talking about kind of what needs to happen next and how and what we're restoring to.
Well, and I think what you also just provided us for parents listening is an incredible model for how to be strong and kind by holding your children to expectations, by allowing consequences, and then by adding this piece that we didn't have when we were growing up, which is then teaching your child or guiding your child into how to make it up, how to come back in to the family or to relationship with you in a way that they can then use the rest of their lives with their colleagues and their spouses and their kids when they mess up. And I just think that's a really beautiful model that I'm like, let's do a workshop, Bridget, for parents on how to do this.
Love to. Happy to do that. I think that's great. And I think the more that parents are thinking about relationships with their children in that way, the happier and healthier I think people overall will be, not just the students, but the parents as well.
I laugh. Teachers always say they wear many hats, but parents wear all the hats.
Oh,
We
all
are
the
the dean. We are
hats.
the student life. We are the
All the
nurse. We are the
hats.
principal. We're the teacher. But we are a microcosm of school, and school is
Hmm.
a microcosm of like when it's done well, like a really
Yeah,
big family.
absolutely.
So I just love that partnership. And I think the work you're doing with deans at Dean's Roundtable, with your podcast, with all the resources that you have coming out to support deans and student life professionals, parents, you all need to share all this stuff with your schools because Bridget has got some fantastic stuff coming out. Bridget, where can they find more information about what you're doing that they can share with their schools or that they might even be able to like steal and use themselves?
Oh, absolutely. So, website deansroundtable.org is where you can get all of that information. We post weekly blog posts on LinkedIn, Instagram, and TikTok, but all of those things are on the website. So, if you go to the website, it's one stop shop. There's also a link to the podcast. So, if you're interested in listening to the podcast, you can do that as well. And so, but also, I'm here as a resource. If you have some questions for me, would like to reach out, Bridget at deansroundtable.org is where you can find me.
Bridget, that is so fantastic. I hope a lot of people reach out and call you. Your podcast is fantastic. All your LinkedIn work is so good. I strongly recommend a like, follow, and share for her.
Thank you.
And, we will definitely put all your contact information in the show notes as well. Bridget, as we wrap up, is there anything that you're like, gosh, I just want to close with this?
Oh, that's a good question. I think all of us need to give ourselves a little bit more grace. We are working hard out here. We are trying our best and we are human and we're not perfect. So it's okay to say, you know what? I'm going to do over. I'm going to do this again, or I'm sorry I didn't get this quite right. I am striving to do things a little bit differently and a little bit better. And thank you for giving me that grace.
Bridget, the words I'm taking out of today are connection and restoration.
I love it.
Right. Well, y'all, that is it for this episode of What Great Teachers Know That All Parents Can Use. I'm Peyten Williams from Bowbend Consulting, signing off till next time. Thank you for sharing all the things you learn in this podcast with the people you love.